full-time sports psychologist at the University of Georgia for about 4.5 years back in the 90s, and then went out on my own because I'm one of these guys, I don't really do too well for the boss. Is anybody else like that? Raise your hand. Who else is that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Some people need adult supervision, others don't. We just need an ankle bracelet, right? So anyway, I'm just finishing up a book about this, and I was in Salt Lake for a meeting and had a really interesting conversation with a guy who's a physician that's been working with special forces, and I was so encouraged and affected by my conversation with him that I actually called the editor and I said, hang on a second, I got one more chapter coming. You'll get it in a couple of days. And so what I want to do is just kind of share with you that conversation. It'll give you a sense of kind of the book and kind of how I go about working with people. I don't believe in telling people how to do it or giving them 5 steps or 10 rules to memorize. I don't think you become successful by following somebody else's recipe. But I do feel like that's most of what's out there, is somebody telling you, here, do it the way I did it, it's successful. But anyway, here's the story. So this guy had been, he was in the Army, he got out of the Army, he became a physician. When he finished becoming a physician, he's a Swede, the Swedish head of the Army basic said, I want you to take over the medical operations force, which he did. And he spent the last 10 years going into pretty nasty places like Iraq and Afghanistan, and he still does that today. At the time of my meeting, he's just been asked by NATO to head up all of their medical services. So it looks like he's moving to Belgium as we speak to do that. But anyway, we got to talking about what they do. And of course, with these special forces guys, if you've had any conversations with them, they don't really want to tell you anything because everything's kind of secret. But we got to talk, sharing stories about work, and I asked him about the selection process, because as you might imagine, everybody who's trying to get into special forces, they're already physically good and talented, right? You see what I'm saying? So it's the best people in terms of skill set to get invited to do this. Of course, it's the same with working with college and professional athletes. Everybody's good, everybody's talented. So he said, here's one of the things that we do is that we put them through a series of exercises, but we always make the instruction pretty general and vague. And he said, one of the things we do is we have about 12 or 15 guys. We put them in a 15-foot pool. And the only instruction that you're given, and you're not allowed to ask any questions about the instructions, is every time they blow the whistle, you dive down to the bottom of the pool, touch the pool, and come back up. And so off they go. Of course, there's a couple of, scuba guys sitting in the bottom to make sure nobody drowns. They think they're there to make sure you touch the bottom. But the fact of the matter is they're not really interested if you touch the bottom or not. So what happens is, you go down 15 feet and come up after about 3 or 4 times, you're pretty much out of breath. They allow you to take a breath or two, they blow the whistle. So after a couple of minutes, people start not being able to get to the bottom. And so when they come back up the top, because they weren't able to touch the bottom, they swim over to the side, they essentially quit. They disqualify themselves. And then after the end of about 5 minutes, he says, pretty much everybody's quit. But the guys who don't quit, those are the guys who move to the next round. So what he's basically saying is we don't tell anybody that they fail. They determine on their own that they fail. Well, I got to thinking about that, and I said, man, that's just the way it is in everything. I told this story to the golfers I was last time. You're on the golf course, you hit a couple bad shots, you start cussing and say, I don't want to be anymore, you just quit, you just disqualified yourself. And what it made me think of is essentially kind of how do people go about failing. And the main way that people fail is they give up. In other words, they assume that they have failed because somebody asked them to do something and they weren't able to do it that time, or they weren't able to do it every time, right? The mind of the perfectionist. And therefore they assume that they failed. What he talked about with the special forces is you're going to be in some really pretty nasty situations. And what they're looking for is people who don't quit when they're faced with that kind of adversity. that was the first thing he shared with me I thought was pretty interesting. Then I got to asking him about, kind of specific teams, how they put stuff together. He told me about this guy who was a sniper. He said he was the best sniper that he'd ever been around. Everybody has a nickname. This guy's nickname was Pooh. And I was asking, what makes a good sniper? Because just like everything else in there, everybody's talented. But what he said is that all the snipers can shoot really well. He said, but there's a few guys who have the patience to wait and wait and wait for a shot that they're 100% sure that they can get. And he said those are the guys that we're looking for. In other words, they're not going to do it unless they're sure they're going to be certain. Because when you're talking about the sniper, you might just have one shot, because once a person realizes they're a target, well, then they kind of disappear on you. And then he really got engaged when he was telling about this fellow, and he told me of the situation that they were in the last couple of years where they basically were out on patrol. It was a small group of them. I got the sense of about 6 or 8 of them. And they basically got themselves in a situation where they found themselves surrounded by the enemy. And as they began to kind of put the pieces together, they realized that this didn't look too good. And in fact, they realized there's a pretty good chance that they were going to get taken out because there was no way out. And these guys were essentially moving in on them and were eventually going to kill them or blow them up. After they realized this fellow Pooh, he knows what happens in war when you kill people. Do you guys know what they do after they kill you? They come and take all your stuff. They basically go through your bag and through your person, and anything that they can use and scavenge, they take it. And he knew that because he had seen that happen. And so this fellow Pooh says, they might kill me, but they're not going to get my chocolate. Because in his ration bag, they all, and along with their food, they all had a bar of chocolate. And he knew that the enemy really would like that. So he says to the group, everybody take their bags off and get your chocolate out, eat your chocolate, because they ain't getting their damn chocolate. And I got to thinking about the power of that. Of course, the rest of the story is obviously they got out because they were able to, the guy was telling me, kind of stopping and thinking about what you can do, eating the chocolate, if you will. They got some energy. They came up with a plan. They had an opportunity. They got out. He wouldn't tell me the specifics of it. But I got to thinking about that, what do I do when I find myself in a terrible situation when I'm surrounded by the enemy and I look like this might be the end? And the answer is the people that really are successful and survive, they can always find one thing, at least one thing that they can do. In other words, they never become the victim. That they always, despite their situation, they always see themselves as having some option or some way out. And I thought that was really, to me, was really pretty powerful, that I see that with people who have consistently performed at a high level. That no matter what the situation is, they always see themselves as having one more move or one more option. And I think about people who really struggle, they pretty quickly get to the point where there's nothing I can do. The third thing that he shared with me that I wrote about in the book is he talked about the kind of, because I was asking a lot of questions psychologically about the mindset, specifically the stress of being at war. What, everybody's familiar with are you guys familiar with the PTSD, the post-traumatic stress disorder? And
yes.
You're aware that with soldiers, it's a really high incident rate, and basically a lot of these guys come back, and even though there's nothing physically wrong with them, they end up being 100% disabled because they can't go out and function. And so I said, so what do you think differentiates the guys who get this post-traumatic stress disorder, the guys who can't? And he started talking about, he said, we notice a lot in the Army, there's guys who really want to be in the Army. They want to be soldiers. They want everybody to know they're in the Army. They want to wear the clothes. They want to get the tattoos. They want to go out and be heroes and blow up stuff and kill people. And they have a lot of pride around that. And he said, we're basically looking for guys who don't really want to be in the Army. In fact, they're not really interested in going to war, and they certainly aren't interested in killing people. And he said, because when you find those kinds of guys, when they're not on a mission, they're able to walk away from it and leave it behind. So the concept he uses is kind of turn it on and turn it off. And I got to think about that with, a lot of my corporate clients and the stress that people have in corporate America. And one of the things that I realize is that a lot of folks really have a hard time when they leave the job comes with them. You know, they really can't turn it off. So they go to work 10 or 12 hours a day, then they go home and they think about work for another 2 or 3 hours and go to bed. And what he was talking about is if you don't have that capacity to turn it off, to leave it, then the stress of whatever you're doing, especially if you're performing at a high level, will really kind of take you down. I got to thinking about it also in terms of my own work and what I try to do. And basically, I feel like right now in my profession, I'm doing the best work that I've ever done. Does any of you guys feel that way right now? Like you're kind of at the top of your game? Just give a raise of hands. I'm just curious. Does anybody feel that way? Without knowing you, I would suggest to you that probably one of the changes that's happened is your ability to be present with whomever you're with. Or in other words, to let whatever it is that you're doing be the most important thing. And then as soon as you're done with it, you go on to the next thing. Does that make any sense?
Yeah.
Because what I find is a lot of people really pretty much stay distracted. They have, 30, 40% of their attention scattered across a couple of 3 or 4 things. And they never really are fully present. I think for people who are leaders of business, when you're sitting with people, they can really sense whether or not you're present with them or not. And I think it's really important to develop a mindset where you basically say, I'm here for a reason or some purpose. I may not know what it is, but I know I'm not here by accident. And there's something I need to be doing that's going to make a difference. And so when you have that belief about yourself and what you do, I think it allows you to let whatever it is that you're doing be the most important thing in the world. And some people really struggle with that. They say, well, that's kind of insincere. But I found out through practice and talking with other people that perform at a high level is that's essentially what they do. Whatever they're doing, they have created a mindset that this is the only thing